My jaw can dislocate really easily. It's a thing that it's always done as long as I can remember, and it's something that I'm very used to working around. I don't open my mouth too wide, I don't eat things that are too hard, etc., etc. But it dislocated again the other night, and it's a odd enough occurrence now that when my parents visited earlier, I mentioned it. And Mum launched into a story that I'd honestly kind of forgotten about the time I had an upper endoscopy and things went wrong. Nothing major. The endoscopy went fine. We were checking for celiac disease. I don't have celiac disease, so that was cool. But there was something weird about how it all went down. I went in the morning and I had a chat with a nurse, an intake nurse, I guess, who asked me if there was any medical conditions or anything that was relevant to the operation. And I said my usual, I have various problems, I don't have an overarching name for them, but here is a description of what I think might be relevant. And the two things I distinctly remember saying were that my jaw dislocates easily if my mouth opens too wide, because this had been an ongoing issue at dentists, and I had braces, and every time we did anything with braces, it was a risk that my jaw would dislocate. And I also mentioned that any kind of painkillers, antihistamines, anesthetic, anything that is meant to make you drowsy affects me more than it should. Mostly just the drowsiness part. The painkiller part, etc., that's all fine. But if a medicine is meant to make you drowsy, it will knock me out. Anything that's meant to knock you out generally knocks me out for twice as long as it's meant to, at least. So I went into the operation room and everything was fine. I got anesthetized, fell asleep, woke up, and I was extremely groggy, which I'd kind of expected because I knew that I would probably react weirdly. But I woke up to a crowd of nurses and a doctor, all standing around me, standing around my bed, and with my jaw dislocated. And from my very hazy memories, they were all panicking because they had to do something about this. And me being doped up on anesthetic and everything else and being very used to this, just kind of moved my jaw, put it back in place. And then fell asleep again and woke up hours later. But my mum was there that day. She dropped me off and she'd been waiting to take me home. And the weirdest thing about all this, and the thing that Mum mentioned today, which I'd kind of forgotten, I think Mum got questioned quite a bit about my jaw and about my reaction to the anesthetic. Which is weird considering I had told the nurse about both of those things. And it seems like somewhere along the line there was a miscommunication. And that information didn't make it from the nurse who interviewed me to whoever it needed to go to. I have a lot of medical stories that are like this. There is a reason I'm very wary of seeing doctors these days, even though I have enough health issues that do impact my life day to day in annoying enough ways that I really should. I have a period of about 6 weeks back in high school that I don't remember because of medicine I was put on that affected my memory, and I've had many doctors check various of my symptoms over the years and not be able to come up with anything useful. I've had some doctors who are able to treat the symptoms, but have had no idea what the cause is. But I think one thing I need to keep reminding myself is that there are good doctors out there. And there are doctors whose specialty doesn't always align with what is wrong with me. There are doctors who could be amazing in one field, but I see them about something completely different, and because they're human, they can't help. And I mean, yes, I'm sure there's actually incompetent doctors out there, but I do need to remind myself that medicine is a very big field. There is a lot to learn. It's constantly changing. And every doctor can't be expected to know everything. Which does make it more painful to try and get a diagnosis on anything, because you have to go to a whole bunch of doctors before you find one who knows what you're talking about. I think the best experience I've ever had with a doctor was the time I ended up in emergency because of pain in my abdomen that the nurses actually originally thought might be appendicitis, which of course causes all kinds of panic. And I had a family history of that kind of thing, so, chances were good. But they did all their tests, and it wasn't appendicitis. But there was something odd in my gut, and I lucked out because there was a doctor there that day who did not specialize in anything remotely related to this, I believe. He was able to say, hey, I think you might have this thing that's been recognized in the last couple of years, and Monash is doing a heap of research into it. And there's this dietitian nearby who specializes in it. You should go talk to her, and she might be able to solve things. And sure enough, I went to that dietitian, and within 2 appointments, she said, yes, you have IBS, and you need the FODMAP diet, which is what Monash was researching. And also you have this other thing as well, which is not helping because these interact kind of painfully. And I spent a few months going to that dietitian every couple of weeks. But even long before I stopped seeing her, the improvement in my health was insane. I've always been a sickly kid, a bit frail, prone to catching whatever was going around. But the worst thing for me was always that I would wake up in pain a lot of days. And I'd actually gotten into a habit of setting my alarm half an hour or an hour earlier than it needed to be, just in case on that particular day I would wake up in so much pain I couldn't move, and I would need to lie there and wait it out before I'd be able to get up and go about my day. And it was one of those things that I talked to doctors about and I talked to my parents about, but it wasn't, nobody could figure it out. And it turns out I'm just allergic or intolerant to most food in existence. And the diet that I was eating at home and at school was extremely bad for me in terms of my body just not being able to handle it. And so the dietitian put me on a different diet, and suddenly within a week my body was fine. But sometimes I think what would have happened if I hadn't stumbled on that one doctor, if he hadn't been there that day in the ER and seen my results, my bizarre results, and being able to connect it to this thing that wasn't even particularly well known at that point, I don't know where I'd be. Because this all happened early in my university degree. And before this, I was having to miss days. I was often missing my first lecture if it was too early in the morning. I was missing entire weeks sometimes because I just could not function. And I was honestly scared that I wouldn't be able to finish my degree because I wouldn't be able to put up with the schedule and the stress and the way that that affected my body. But I finished my degree and I got a job and I started working full time. And I've successfully held a full-time job for years now. And honestly, back when I first stumbled into that emergency room, I didn't think that would be possible. I had a goal to have a full-time job, but I didn't really think I'd ever achieve it. I thought my health would get in the way. So the fact I can, the fact I have, the fact that I was able to get through uni and therefore get the job I've had, I think a lot of that really does come down to that one doctor. So yeah, that was a couple of long stories. But I think when I was talking to Mum today, and I remembered just how badly that endoscopy went, I found I really needed to remind myself that, yes, I've had some doctors who weren't able to help. But I've also had some doctors who seriously changed my life. And I need to remember that. And I think I want to say thank you to that doctor and all the other doctors who have actually improved my life over the years. So, thank you.